I've got work, so you'll need to walk to the hospital. On a night of heavy snowfall. Me and my daughter, feverish and weak. Suddenly, on our way to the hospital in my husband's car, he pulled over abruptly. What? What do you mean? Then, my husband dragged me and my daughter out onto the cold, snow-covered road, and just like that, the car disappeared from sight. Holding my little one, I started walking on the snowy path, shaking with anger. Somehow, we made it to the hospital, but my consciousness was fading, and that's where my memory ends. I never imagined what would happen next. I'm Samantha Johnson, a 28-year-old housewife. 5 years ago, through a colleague's introduction, I married George, a civil servant I was dating. Afterward, we moved to a small town deep in the mountains, my husband's hometown, to care for his bedridden father. He got a job at the local town hall, and I quit the job I had been doing until then. The community was kind, and in my spare time, I helped with the neighbors' farming, integrating into the rural life there. 3 years ago, our daughter Sarah was born. We were blessed by those around us, and both mother and child could live peacefully. However, George somehow despised the local relationships, and as I grew accustomed to life here, his attitude towards me changed. I never thought Samantha would choose them over me. I shouldn't have married you. My husband let out loud monologues intentionally for me to hear. Why does George hate such good people, I wonder? I felt a sense of discomfort with his thoughtless words. Yet, my husband cared deeply about appearances and never showed such behavior in front of the townspeople. Because this was a small town. Showing strange behavior could lead to being ostracized, making it impossible to live here, a fact easily imagined. Therefore, life with my husband was anything but sweet. Due to his job, George left early in the morning and returned late at night, hardly leaving us any time together. I've already eaten, so don't bother. What? But you said you wanted stuffed cabbage, so I spent all morning making it. Who said I wanted to eat your terrible cooking? He ostentatiously threw the receipt from a restaurant known for its stuffed cabbage at me. This kind of thing happened often, and not preparing dinner would also result in a complaint. And my husband's approach to parenting was far from joyful. George, can you check on Sarah? I can't leave what I'm doing right now, and she's crying. Why do I have to do that? That's a mother's job. But she's our precious daughter. George, please help a little. Don't talk back. I'm working to feed you. My husband, looking like a demon, yelled and slapped my cheek. When he was in a bad mood, he had started to raise his hand to me. Thankfully, he never did the same to our young daughter Sarah, but he wouldn't even hold her. How did it come to this? Things were completely like this, but before we got married, my husband was the kindest to me. It might be tough with me in the future, but will you stay by my side? Yes. Please take care of me. I had leapt into a marriage with George, imagining a happy life together. Because it was him, I was prepared without hesitation to take care of his father and live in the countryside. Yet here I was, eating the dinners I made for George by myself the next day. Thinking, I want to escape from here. Every time he hit me for speaking up. But what kept me from leaving were George's parents and George's sister, Kathy. Is George not causing you trouble? Are you okay? He seems busy with work, sometimes not coming home. Because of that, he hardly helps with taking care of our daughter. Kathy was very caring, and I could consult her about anything, just like a real sister. Moreover, when I was in trouble, George's mother would take care of Sarah, and his parents were very kind to me, having married into their family in the countryside. I have to do my best, too. I couldn't bring myself to abandon taking care of George's father halfway, and more than anything, I had grown to love this town too much to leave. Then, on a certain holiday, while my husband usually got up before me and went out, he was still asleep in bed. This is unusual. Does he not have plans today? Even though I doubted he had made time for me and our daughter, I couldn't help but harbor a faint hope. However, he showed no signs of waking up, having told me nothing. It's just my imagination, I thought, resigning myself as I was about to go shopping with my daughter. That's when his smartphone rang. George, who had come home late the night before, didn't notice the call, leaving only the sound of music filling the room. What should I do? Should I just leave it? But it might be important work-related. I picked up my husband's smartphone to check who it was from. Rachel? Doesn't seem like someone from work. I froze, staring at the phone screen. Don't just look at it. That's the worst. George, having woken up, forcefully took the phone from me. I'm sorry. But, who is she? It's none of your business. Get lost. He pushed me aside and left the house, talking amiably with the woman on the other end of the phone. So close with that woman. Could it be an affair? He used to think of me more than anyone else, and more importantly, he was the one I had fallen in love with. I had etched in my heart that I would never accept that. But at that moment, something was lying in the bedroom, cutting off my lingering attachments. Days passed, and on a night with a heavy snow warning, my daughter and I came down with a high fever. It would take 30 minutes to get to the hospital by car. I don't have a driver's license, and outside, the world was painted white, the barely visible walkways looked impassable. Could you take us to the hospital? Huh? What a hassle. I'm tired from work. It's not just Sarah, my fever won't go down either. Please. I begged, coughing, my head bowed. I don't want to catch it. Damn. What a pain. Reluctantly, he led us into the back seat of the car, where I placed Sarah in her car seat. Her round cheeks were red, and she was breathing shallowly. My heart ached, but I was too dizzy to do anything. There was no conversation in the car, only the sound of the engine and the steering wheel. Then, George's smartphone began to ring loudly, signaling an incoming call. It might be work. I need to stop for a bit. Please make it quick. I was filled with a desire to get to the hospital as soon as possible, but if it was a call related to work, it was different. He was working hard to support the family, and I thought it better to wait silently than to provoke his anger by saying unnecessary things. I've got work, so you two walk to the hospital from here. I couldn't comprehend my husband's sudden decision. What are you doing? George got out of the driver's seat and forcibly dragged me and my daughter onto the cold road. Then, with a merciless sound, the door closed. Open up. If you leave us here, something will happen to Sarah. Help. I banged on the car windows, but there was no response. Then, as if to shake me off, the car turned around and disappeared behind the snow piled up at the edge of the road. The cold intensified, and I started losing sensation in my hands and feet. It's cold. It's hard. But she must be suffering more. Even as I felt an inescapable anger towards George, I took a step forward. However, in the blizzard, with a high fever, my head throbbed, making it impossible to move forward. The breathing of my daughter, whom I held in my arms, had become shallower than before, and it was clear her fever was rising. Moreover, in my haste, I had no phone charge left to call for help. Quickly. I have to take her. With that sole thought, I managed to reach the hospital in a semi-conscious state. I handed my daughter over to a nurse and then blacked out. When I woke up, I was on an 4-drip, feeling much better. My daughter's fever had subsided, her cheeks had returned to a healthy pink, and she was sleeping peacefully beside me. Sigh. I'm glad. Tears spilled from my eyes as I looked at her, relieved. And there, on the hospital bed, I slowly pondered over George's behavior and suspicions of infidelity. The incident of being left in the snow turned my simmering feelings into anger. Can you look after Sarah for a while? When I explained the situation to George's mother at the hospital, she agreed to take her in without hesitation. I also confided everything to Kathy. Her fever's down, so she can be discharged after a day if she's okay. But I have to stay in the hospital for about a week. I had no choice but to call home. Huh, so what? Don't tell me you want me to take care of the kid. If that's it, forget about it. It's okay, your mother will take care of Sarah while I'm not there. I was irritated by my husband's indifferent response, but I couldn't let it show now. I suppressed my anger and quietly hung up the public phone. A week later, fully recovered, I returned home with determined steps. Samantha, help me. George approached me, his face a mix of tears and blood. Behind him stood his sister, Kathy, imposingly. Samantha. Welcome back, are you okay? I'm back. Kathy, what happened? Noticing me, Kathy smiled warmly. On the other hand, George's face was a mess, far removed from his usual composure. Sis beat me up. Call the police. That's rich, considering you've been drooling over someone other than your wife. Kathy then explained why George was bloodied. I caught him being intimate with some girl behind his workplace. According to her, she remembered my concerns about George's infidelity when she went to deliver something he forgot at work. I had confided in her about his philandering before. Without being asked, she took it upon herself to uncover the truth. When I confronted him about the girl I saw at his company, he lashed out, and I ended up throwing him over my shoulder. Turns out, Kathy was a former judo club member with a black belt and considerable achievements. Despite his efforts, George stumbled after being thrown and hit his nose on the corner of a dresser, causing a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. Listen, Samantha. I wasn't cheating. The person I was with was just, a colleague, and we're just close, that's all. I don't need such transparent lies. Because I know everything. I pulled out a business card that read, I really like you, George. Let's go on many more dates. I found this in the bedroom. It's clear it wasn't exchanged at work, right? So, I met with the woman who owns this card. But you were supposed to be in the hospital a few days ago? The story about my prolonged hospital stay was a complete lie. I had been discharged and spent the time investigating George's affair. She said you told her you were single. But it seems she was also hiding her marriage, so I guess you were alike. What, really? So, she was playing me? Yeah, she said it would be bad if her husband found out, so she won't meet you again. George seemed deeply invested in his affair. Now, he slumped, tears welling up in his eyes. Sorry to ask right after you've been dumped, but could you sign this for me? I conspicuously pulled a divorce petition from my bag. Stop, please. Anything but divorce. I'll start thinking about you and our daughter properly from now on. Oh, why? You're not interested in us anyway, are you? Damn. You know that, so why ask? We lived in a small rural town. A divorce would spread rumors quickly, and if it was known that George's infidelity was the cause, his reputation would plummet. It was palpable he feared that. Maybe his disdain for rural relationships was because his misdeeds would easily spread to others. Then it might be too late. What do you mean? I've told everything to the town's biggest gossip. By now, everyone probably knows what you did. George turned pale, standing frozen with his mouth agape. Sorry. Please forgive me. And somehow spread that this was all a lie throughout the town. After all you've done, now you say help me? Huh? That's too much. But I asked for help, didn't I? It's lucky for us there were no lasting effects. But what if there had been? How would you have taken responsibility? As I recalled the snowy day, I glared at him. I never want to see you again. I'll be asking for $30,000 in damages and $50,000 for our daughter's upbringing. Be prepared. I can't pay that kind of money. George collapsed to the ground, eventually prostrating himself. But it was too late for such gestures. My decision was firm. Get out of here, now. I dragged him out of the house. A few days later, with the help of George's mother and Kathy, the divorce was finalized quickly. As declared, the compensation was settled at $30,000, with a monthly child support payment of $500. George was disowned by his in-laws over this incident and left town, now living alone and continuing to pay child support. The woman he had an affair with was also discovered by her husband, leading to a divorce. Meanwhile, I stayed in this rural town, surrounded by warm-hearted townspeople, continuing to care for Sarah and my father-in-law. A vacancy opened up, and I was able to secure a job at the town hall. From now on, I want to do my best for my parents-in-law and daughter.